Hello friends, I'm Pauline Walcott. Jonathan Edwards was born in an era when Puritanism had its greatest impact. In the first chapter of Jonathan Edwards' A Life, Marsden addresses the influences of Puritanism. Jonathan was born to Timothy and Esther Edwards in East Windsor, Connecticut, October 5, 1703. His father, an ordained pastor, was a Puritan. His mother was the daughter of Solomon Stoddard, pastor of the river town of Northampton, Massachusetts. Early in his life, Jonathan knew his calling was the Christian ministry. At the age of 13, he enrolled at Yale College to study for the ministry. We learn from Jonathan Edwards' biography in the Jonathan Edwards Center at the University of Yale that he was an exemplary student engaged in contemporary issues of Puritan philosophy and theology. After 3 years of study, he graduated as Victorian. He was a scholar, an intellectual, and an aesthetic. He became increasingly interested in nature and the beauty of God's creation. Upon returning to East Windsor, Jonathan realized that he harbored unacceptable resentment toward his parents, especially his father, and who continued to demand that Jonathan do his bidding. Jonathan spent 2 years in New York City as pastor to a small Presbyterian church. At the time, his theology had evolved into the Calvinistic or Presbyterian mode. In his book, A Dortian Philosophy, Kenneth M. McKenna quotes Jonathan as saying, "I should not take it at all amiss to be called a Calvinist for distinction's sake, though I utterly disdain a dependence on Calvin, and cannot justify the charge that I was believing everything he taught." After returning home from New York, Jonathan spent time as a pastor to become a teaching pastor to Indians in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. In 1726, Jonathan Edwards succeeded his grandfather, Samuel Stoddard, as pastor of the church at Northampton, the largest and most influential church outside of Boston. He married Sarah Pierpont. By this time, Jonathan Edwards realized that his deliberations were forming into a theology, the study of God. He became a supporter of and a participant in the New Awakening, a worldwide evangelical movement that was particularly strong in New England. People were becoming more aware of the many aspects of God and how their lives could be affected by those attributes. Crompton, in Jonathan Edwards, presents a detailed account of the First Great Awakening, as it is called, because there was another awakening later. Crompton recorded the conversations between Edwards and Whitefield, a well-known evangelist. Jonathan's sermons, which were saturated in Calvinistic theory and theology, were impactful. In his sermons, one heard about God's judgment, human depravity, and the fires of hell. But at heart, Jonathan was a real ascetic. He spoke of God's beauty, His grace, His truth, the goodness. Although an eloquent speaker, Jonathan Edwards made his biggest contribution as a writer. Edwards died of smallpox at a young age, 54, but his work lives on.